Hello, everybody. Welcome to the W4K What We Wish We Knew podcast. I'm your host, John Sky, and here with me is my co-host, Monica O'Keefe. Today, we're going to be talking about what we wish we knew when we bought our homes. The good, the bad, the ugly. Stay tuned to hear our home buying horror stories. Okay, so I wanted to talk about this in our very first podcast because I think you and I have both had some unfortunate home buying stories. I think yours were worse than mine, though. Yeah.
But also some lovely stories, some happy endings.
Yes. And I feel the same way with my home buying experience. So, for those of you just tuning in for this very first podcast of ours, the What We Wish We Know
Whoop, whoop.
or What We Wish We Knew podcast talks about all the things in life that we wish we would have known as we were growing up, that we wish we could have learned in school, or that we wish we knew now.
Because no one taught us. We had to learn as we went.
Yeah, exactly. So, talking about homes. So how many homes have you bought?
So, like, me being involved in the home purchasing process, 3 total.
Oh.
So far.
So there's a third home. So you've bought more homes than I have.
Well, technically 2 with my name on them, but, like, I was on the title for my first one.
Right.
So I saw the process, but I think it counts.
But most everything was done by someone else.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So you've got 3 homes. I have bought 2. And my experience was kind of the same way with the first home. So I was in the military at the time. And this was with my first wife. She basically, I know that's another episode. That will be probably a series of episodes.
Yes.
Not to bad talk her or anything because she's still great, but relationships are always crazy. But I was gone. I think I was actually in Panama at the time we needed to start looking for homes. We were living in Logan in a townhome that we were just renting. Logan, Utah. Yep. It's cold up there. It's a college town. That's really all that exists up there is, if you want to do some outdoor hikes, it's great. And that's how you get to Bear Lake, which is a huge tourist attraction. But basically what was happening is I was gone. We needed to find a home because we needed to move within like 30, 40 days. And I had military orders for the next 30 days. So I was gone.
Oh.
And so she basically called me and said, "Hey, I just put an offer in on a house." And I'm like, sweet.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
And when I finally got off orders, we were a few days from closing. So she had taken care of all the paperwork. Basically, it was like the same thing you were saying, except for my name was stamped on it.
Mm-hmm.
And she had done all the grunt work, which...
Good and bad, right?
It is.
Okay.
It's bad in the sense that I didn't get to learn how to buy a house the first time. And she had to do all that work and I felt bad. But it's also good because she had to do all that work and I didn't.
You just walk into a new home.
Yeah. But there was a caveat. So the people who were selling the home, they actually already had... I don't know if I've ever told you this story.
No, this is brand new.
Okay.
I'm buckled down.
So there was already an offer on the house, but that offer was contingent on those people being able to sell their house within 30 days.
That's always hard. Yeah.
And at the time, it was 2012. The housing market wasn't hot, but it wasn't cool. It was just kind of,
and it was so cheap back then.
It was cheaper, but it was also a crapshoot. You didn't really know if your house was going to sell quickly or if it was going to be on the market for 3 or 4 months. And the 30 days came and went. And the real estate company that was helping with the sale, with the sellers, they notified those people who were under contract, said, "Hey, have you sold your house?" They said, "Nope." They said, "Okay, we have to move on to the next people." And so that was us. We were the next people. So we went, we signed, we closed, we got our keys. I'm at the Home Depot moving in.
The Home Depot.
Yep. The Home Depot moving in. I just moved in that day. I'm buying a lawnmower because the yard was in shambles. And I get a call from our real estate agent. And he's like, "Hey, so closing didn't actually end up happening. They weren't able to fund because there's a lien on the house.
No.
Yeah. So a lien is basically like someone else is saying they have some form of ownership or equity in the house. So it could be maybe you didn't pay your garbage bills and the garbage company has now, or the trash company has now placed a lien on your house. So it can't be sold until those bills are paid, right?
Not good, folks.
Yeah. And so I'm like, great, well, what's the lien? And they said the previous people who wanted to buy the house felt like they were disenfranchised, ripped off, and that the terms weren't fair. And so they went and filed a lien yesterday.
No. You can do that as a buyer?
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
You can file a lien to halt the sale of the house.
Some grumps. Yeah.
And I just moved in. Like, we had the keys.
That's crazy.
And, you know, my real estate agent was like, you can pay the current owner's rent, which we believe that in the next few days this will all be settled because they really don't have a leg to stand on. Or you can move back out of the house for the next few days. And I'm like, well, I'm not moving and I'm not paying rent. And they're like, well, you're not? And I was like, no, because the paperwork that I signed 3 days ago said you guys did your due diligence and that there was no liens. And I had insurance through you guys that if a lien was found, you guys would take care of the additional costs to clear that.
See, so you did kind of know. So
I knew.
Yeah, you read the paperwork.
But it's because absolutely. Yeah. It's because I read the paperwork. And so the real estate agent, he's just an agent. He's not the actual company that has to deal with the back end of things, you know, the title company, the broker. He's just the real estate agent for those guys. And he called me back like 30 minutes later once he realized they were going to be on the hook for having to.
You're like, well, I'm going to go home now.
Pay for it. Yeah. And he's like, we got it taken care of. They dropped the lien. Everything's good. And I'm like, okay, so I don't have to worry about this anymore. He's like, nope, you're good.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, that was so stressful because suddenly you just moved into a house. You no longer have the apartment you were staying in. All your items have just been dropped. The U-Haul's been returned. And someone's saying, oh, now you got to pay rent. Nuts. And I just dumped a bunch in closing costs for me to be able to live in the house for those starting that day.
And if you hadn't read that paperwork, you would have just gone with what they'd said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And had I not been paying attention, and for anyone who's never bought a house, you don't realize, like, people say there's a lot of paperwork, but there is a lot of paperwork, and there's just no time to read every single line. And every time I bought a house, they've done a really good job explaining what each page is, and I can peruse it.
Mm-hmm.
But had I not been paying attention, I would have been out probably only a couple $100.
Yep.
But I also could have been out an entire house and had nowhere to go. So
this is also like the difference between a great realtor and a crummy realtor as well.
Did you have a great realtor or a crummy realtor with either of yours?
Had both, yeah.
What did you have?
So bless her heart. I hope this never gets out to anywhere that she would hear. But and obviously I'm not going to mention her name. But she just didn't explain to me a lot of the process as a first time home buyer. That's what it was. So as we were going through the paperwork, like nothing was really explained to me. I was just like, I trust these people. Like they know what they're doing. They've done this a long time. They do it probably multiple times a month.
Right.
So, I just went through the process. Luckily, like nothing super crazy like that happened to me, but, buying my second home with like just myself, my new realtor that I got just was the most amazing ever. She explained every step of the way with me, and she did more than she needed to, and it just made it made so much of a difference.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I didn't get to choose this realtor. I didn't get to choose the house.
That's right. Yeah.
I did get to walk through it before before we had to finalize documents. We would have lost earnest money, but I saw it and was like, this is awesome. How much is it? And it was like way more than what we had initially planned. But I think so I've found that out as I'm buying homes. Like awesome. I've always under budgeted what I think a home should cost.
Yeah.
So let's redirect. So what made you decide, being by yourself, buy a home and not just keep renting an apartment?
Oh my gosh, the investment, hands down. Like rent, I felt like I was just throwing my money away. It's benefiting somebody else. They have this investment that I'm helping them pay off. Right. But buying a home, and I will never ever regret that I did that. It has made the difference in where I'm at now. Mm-hmm. So definitely, like, I bought my first home. Okay, there's 3. This is the second, like the first one I had my name on in Bountiful.
Yeah.
And it was an old crapshoot, as you know.
I know.
more than enough to help me fix it. But
for those of you who don't know, I've helped fix that house a bit.
Yes, a bit, for sure. It was just run down. And I had in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, it'd be so fun to fix up an old house, knowing nothing about what it took to fix up an old house. So just so you know, you got to have the means to do it. You've got to have the right resources. I did not. I was like, oh, I can DIY the roof.
Yeah. No, and that's, so I think that's a pitfall. That's something that I wish a lot of people would know. I wish we knew just how expensive it can be to buy a house that's, even if it's considered a turnkey home, you know, where everything's ready, the finishings are perfect, the paint is there, with exception of, you know, your new house is, it's a little bit different because you're kind of like in an HOA community, right?
Yeah.
And so they take care of a lot of kind of the grunt work on the outside of things.
I love. It's fantastic.
But people don't even realize, you know, you go to buy a house, moving from an apartment or a townhome or a condo, whatever, and all of a sudden you have a lawnmower, you need a snow blower or a snow shovel, you need rakes, you need shovels, you need tools to repair your sprinkler system.
All the things.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, all the things. It was a nightmare.
And so the good that comes from owning the home is that you get to do, unless you're stuck in an HOA, you get to do what you want with the home, pretty much however you want within reason. Obviously, there's city codes and ordinances, right? But the downside is you have to maintain your home.
You have to have the resources.
And you have to have the resources.
Yeah.
And the other thing that a lot of people don't realize, and now you lucked out because yours was an investment, right?
It was.
It grew equity.
Definitely.
And you were able to sell despite its condition, and you still turned a profit. What a lot of people get confused with, though, when they go to buy a home is they think, oh, my home is an asset. But it's not. So in the business world, for those of you who don't know, I have a master's of business administration. Doesn't necessarily mean anything, though.
Not anymore.
That's you can't see it, but there's a certificate on one of these walls.
He's got quite a few, folks. There, yeah.
Yeah. There you can see some of them.
He's a scholar gentleman.
So a home, while you still have a loan on it, is not considered an asset in the business world. An asset is something that helps you generate revenue or profit or grow your business. And what a home would be considered is a liability, which is a debt. And until you can sell it for more than what inflation values it at, and I'll explain that in a second.
Which is where you went, where I won anyway.
Which is where you won. So basically, people make that mistake saying, "Oh, it's an asset. I'm building equity." But most of the time, with exceptions here and there in the economy, home prices usually grow at the same rate of inflation. Now, the last 20 years have proven to be pretty volatile because we keep changing policies. We let people buy homes willy-nilly, or we really restrict people from buying homes, which causes more legislation to let people buy homes.
That's another episode too.
Yep, another episode. But so what happens though is a lot of people they'll buy a home for let's say back in the day, $250,000 home, sell it for $500,000 today. But the problem is if you want to go and buy a home of equivalent size and decent condition, now you have to spend $500,000. Mm-hmm. So you didn't make any money. But what you did was you created a shelter for inflation.
Yes.
So that way you can sell it later.
Exactly.
And actually move into maybe a slightly newer home, or you could have saved up a little bit of money and bought a slightly better home.
And it definitely, you are helping future self out. For sure.
Totally.
if you can do it that way.
How did you figure out how did you start the process to buy a home? Because I think a lot of people don't even know where to start.
Well, that was me. I asked around, like friends that have done it before, and I found a realtor, and the realtor really just kind of walked me through the process. She got me in touch with like funding and a broker, and like to go over my pre-qualification.
Through your own bank, or how did you?
No, I didn't.
You just went with whatever they recommended?
I went with her lender, and they just, I just did what they asked, basically, with my first time.
Nice.
Yeah. So it worked out. It could have been bad, but I learned how it was supposed to, like what I need to look out for. And there was a few things I would have done differently, but.
So with your first house that you bought by yourself, give me a few things you would have done differently.
So don't cut corners. As I was going through and purchasing this home, again, it was an old home. And my one of my relatives at the time, she was like, well, I have a friend that is in construction and he can just come and do, what is the word? It starts with an A. They come, the assessment or what is that? The appraisal. So the appraisal is like someone will go into the home and look for any damages or anything that I should be wary of, like a leaky roof.
Oh, so that's different. So not the appraiser, the inspector.
Inspector, that's what it is. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm like, is it an A? The inspector. So he will go and inspect the home. And so again, my relative was just like, oh, I have a friend that can do this for you, no charge. And I was like, awesome, I get to save money. Cool. I'm going to find out he didn't really have too much experience in it and missed all of the things like my leaky roof and like the mold and like a ton of that John unfortunately had to help me with. Bless your heart. But yeah, so
it's okay, because it helped me learn stuff too.
Yeah. But a lot of that was overlooked, and it quite frankly effed me over for the majority of me owning that home.
So basically the home inspector was like, that was really what the biggest issue was. Otherwise everything else was relatively smooth.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So my experience was very similar, like with how did I learn to buy a home? Well, like the first house I bought, really my wife had done everything. The second home, I did everything out of order pretty much. So
cute.
So the order that you're supposed to do is you're supposed to go to a bank, financial institution first. And and it's okay if you go to a real estate company first. But you're supposed to go to the bank first, and they will do a pre-approval. So they're not doing the full credit check. They're not making you provide tons of documentation and paperwork. They're just getting a rough estimate of how long have you been employed? Can you provide 2 years of employment history? Can you provide what your annual salary is approximately and what you paid in taxes?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they usually come back 24 hours later and they'll say, okay, you're pre-approved for $450,000. But as a tip, something else that we talked about a little bit earlier, I wish people would know was just because you pre-qualified or pre-approved, or even if you are fully qualified for, let's say, a $500,000 house, doesn't mean you should buy a $500,000 house.
Do not go buy that $500 house. Like go maybe 150 below what you're qualified for.
Yeah, if you can. I mean, if it's realistic, or for some people, it might only be realistic to go 30,000 or 50,000 below, but you still want to be able to have a quality of life, not just have a house.
But just know that they will qualify you for a ridiculous amount.
They will. They will put you to the limit.
They will make you house poor.
Exactly. And a lot of it is because they don't ask, about every single bill that you have. They ask about what's on your credit report, which usually isn't going to be a cell phone bill, a cable bill, utilities, daycare. None of that stuff. So people forget, and then they're like, "Oh shoot, I actually don't have money to pay my house payment this month." But basically, with this house that I'm in now, I didn't get pre-approved. I should have, but I didn't. I had a friend who's a real estate agent. I didn't want to deal with the nonsense of someone trying to sell or not sell me something. I just needed him to show me houses. And we looked at probably like, I don't know, like 9 or 10 houses in neighborhoods that I could afford in an awesome way. But those houses were falling apart.
In an awesome way. What does that mean?
In an awesome way means, you know, instead of it being a $315,000 house, they were like a $250,000 house. And so I would have had plenty of money to live, you know, a decent life of a bachelor at the time. But they were dumps. I mean, they were falling apart. They were aged. They had all sorts of issues. And so in the grand scheme of things, I said, you know, I'm going to increase my home budget so that way I can minimize my home upkeep budget. And so we found a house. It was this one. We walked around and said, what's wrong with it? Why is it so cheap? This should probably be another 50 grand more. And so that leads to my second home buying nightmare. So because I was buying my house with a VA loan, I was required to have a more thorough inspection than even what yours was. So obviously yours wasn't
thorough
what you wanted to be, but VA loans are a lot more in depth. So I have like a shed in my backyard. I have a patio cover, and they made the seller come and paint the rafters of that patio cover because it's technically exterior wood that's exposed to the elements. It has to have paint on it.
That was an issue with my home as well.
Yep. And because you didn't have a VA loan, you were able to get past that.
Well, I had a conventional loan.
Right. Yes. Which basically lets you buy whatever you want.
Yes.
And so the other issue that I had, it wasn't even that. Like they came, they painted, it was fine, but you don't get the opportunity, even as a home inspector, to test every single outlet, every single lamp, especially when people are selling their homes and bulbs start to burn out. They tend to not replace them because they're like, I'm moving anyway. And so we didn't know what kind of an electrical nightmare my house had, but I had outlets that weren't grounded. I had outlets that were in what we consider an open phase, which means fire. In fact, you can't see, but in the corner down below me, there's a little wall plate on the wall, and it's there because I found more bad wiring that was hidden inside the wall in a junction box that wasn't supposed to be there.
That's funny.
And it had caught on fire.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like it was burnt to a crisp.
Oh.
And so there was a lot of electrical nightmares, and the mistake that I made, I asked them to fix it, and I thought it was only like a $500 or $600 repair because I thought it was only like 2 outlets. And in their head, I'm sure they knew it was $2,000 to $5,000 in repairs. And they're like, well, can we just, you know, instead of worrying about the electrician, can we just add that, reduce some of that cost off your total home price? And I said, yes. And then later, I wish that I would have said, and I'm fine because I fixed it.
Yeah.
Probably for maybe a little bit more than that. But I wish that I would have had them put the $500 into the closing costs.
Yeah.
Because that $500 that I just had removed from my home, I'm never going to see.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be here for 30 years. So I'm not going to benefit off of that $500 discount. You're talking about like a $3 a month difference in your house payment.
Yep.
And so, but anyway, when I bought my house, it was like I did everything backwards. I put in an offer before even being pre-approved.
Wow, that's ballsy.
I had counter offers. I had so much like debt, and I needed to resolve all of that debt before I could close on my house because my debt to income ratio was going to be crazy. So because of my divorce, I got to cash out some of the equity in my last house.
Yeah.
So I was able to take that and pay off debts and then put a nice, amount of savings in the bank. But the real estate company, the finance company, everyone was stressing. And I'm like, guys, just chill. It's fine.
I got this.
In 2 weeks, I'm not going to have any debt.
Yeah.
And they didn't believe me. And then we got to that point. They're like, I don't know how you pulled it off, but you did. And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. So I did everything out of order.
Stressed everybody out.
And then bought a house that the electrical outlets in the living room didn't work. The porch light didn't work. The
that's how you're able to help me with mine.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. So I learned real quick. And then I added can lights and switched out outlets to make them look better and all sorts of stuff. But it was.
I mean, this guy has solar panels on his roof now.
I do.
So,
I didn't put them on though.
Oh, but still, like talking about electricity problems.
Oh yeah. And I continue to find electrical problems every time I'm upgrading something in the house. It's like the electrician didn't have a clue what they were doing. But what's funny is this random person reached out to me on Facebook because they saw my picture of my house in someone else's Facebook they added some concrete to my driveway, added an RV pad, and they recognized the home. And he messaged me and was like, "Hey, that was my mom's house. She's the one who finished the basement." And he told me she had a friend do the electrical.
Oh,
and so I was like, of course, that's probably why some of it was wrong. I mean,
that's hilarious.
For you electrician types, I had lights on the ceiling wired in series instead of parallel. We're not going to go into what that means.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Basically, if you unscrew one of the light bulbs, the other one goes out too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's not how you wire a house. So now you've had some other good, bad, and ugly experiences.
Have indeed.
So
let's get into it. So my gorgeous rundown home in Bountiful, Utah. Bless it. It helped my family and I out immensely, but I felt like I was stuck in it. And so I did a real dumb thing. I had to move because my son's dad moved like 30 minutes south and he was getting ready to start kindergarten. And so I had to move. It was just logical. But I didn't want to put in the time or effort to fix it up and put it on the market and have the showings. And it's just like a lot of work for a single mom. So we all get these fun flyers in the mail that say, "Hey, are you interested in selling your home?"
Oh, yeah. I get them every day.
Yeah. So I was like, oh my gosh, I am so interested in that. I want to sell my home. So I reached out to one of them and I want to know the name because they effed me over real bad. It was like Utah, I think. So,
okay.
Yeah, they suck.
If you were not that company, don't sue us for libel.
Yeah, you can get that out there. So they came over and they did a brief walkthrough, took some notes, and I'm like, I'm not going to go below 450. Is that something that you guys can do? And they're like, oh yeah, for sure. I'm like, awesome. So like we ended up going under contract for them to buy my home. And
now before they did this, had they done any kind of an assessment, appraisal, or seen the home before they agreed to the 450?
Sorry, they did. So they had a guy come in and he did an assessment of the home. So after that, we went under contract. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. I'm under contract for 450. Like, I know that's what I'm going to get. So I go out and start looking. And I found this gorgeous townhome in Daybreak, Utah. And the finances just were going to work out great. And so I went under contract to buy. So the wholesalers, they're, what is the word? They're the date. Does it start with an L? I suck at this.
What do you mean? Which date?
They had to have everything done by this specific date.
Oh, I don't know what it's called, but I know what you're talking about. So there's like a date that you have agreed to in your contract.
Yeah.
To have all the paperwork, all the financial, everything sorted so you can sign.
Yep. All the inspections, you have to have the inspections done. So, so their date was, I'm going to say this isn't accurate, but I'll just say like the 15th. And so I made my date for this home I'm buying the 16th. Makes sense.
Yeah. No, it makes total.
Yeah. So, it's the day of them to like, once that date's done, we're signed. Like, that's it. They're going to buy my home. Well, the date came and I was waiting and I was waiting and I was waiting for their signature to come through. Instead, what I got was, oh, hey, we can't do 450 anymore because the market changed. We can do 380.
Are you serious?
Serious.
The market didn't change $70,000 in 30 days.
Nope. But apparently they do this every time. And I wasn't aware. So what I should have done was I should have had them pay the earnest money. I should have had them pay me like $8,000 of earnest money so that they couldn't go back.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't know that at the time.
Okay. So you didn't have any earnest money?
No.
Okay.
Nope. So that was another thing that I wasn't aware of.
Tell us what earnest money is.
Okay. I don't know any
That's okay.
terms, but earnest money is basically a hold. So if they were to pay me $8,000 of earnest money and they do their inspection, they would lose it if they back out.
Right.
So if I would have done that, that would have locked them in. It would have made it more serious for them. Like they can either,
or you would have just had your house and $8,000.
Exactly.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, $8,000 is kind of,
it's a little high.
It's a high mark. A lot of people typically do $1,000 to $3,000 depending on the home.
But for wholesalers,
absolutely.
Yeah. Get them on the line.
Yep.
So yeah, $380. And I cried because now I'm going to lose this townhome that I just went under contract for. I'm not going to be able to meet my date, which was the next day. So it was awful. It was stressful. And then my superhero of a friend, that was also my realtor. She just saved my whole life. She ended up being like, hey, I'll buy your home, because her and her partner have wanted to renovate a home for a while and they have the resources to do it. And it just so happened to work out. They had their funding in place. They had an HOA they were going to use. HOA? No. What is it?
No. Are you just talking about the funding company?
The funding, it's called something. There's an H in it, but they got everything in place. So I was able to go and grab that townhome back off the market, go back under contract with them. It was the same townhome I wanted, and everything just worked out perfectly after that. It was a nightmare that ended into a beautiful fairy tale ending.
Nice.
Yes.
And I've been to your house.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Are there perfections in it? Yes. Are there imperfections? Yes. But that's what makes it a home.
I would take those imperfections
any day
over the last ones.
I mean, you've got 4 solid walls. The only thing that I gripe about, I don't like sharing walls with people because I'm noisy. You guys can't see, but there's a bunch of musical instruments in here. So my neighbors would be driven crazy.
I am an end unit.
And you're an end unit, so
you
kind of are in a good spot.
But as a single mom, I don't have to do any of the yard work. Any of the external on the townhome is taken care of in my HOA.
Snow removal.
All of it. It's just gorgeous.
It's all covered.
I love it.
Yeah. So that's a plus. A lot of people are afraid of HOA because they hear these HOA horror stories. And granted, you haven't been there long enough to experience an HOA horror story through them yet, but it sounds like everything's fine.
Everything's fine now in Daybreak.
And
in the beginning.
And realistically, it's usually the people who are in HOAs in full homes with full yards, and they're not allowed to hang the flags they want to fly, or they can't put flamingos in their garden, or weird rules like that. But overall, I was part of an HOA when I was living in that townhome in Logan. It was fine.
Yeah.
Mostly
works out.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have a different segment on HOAs though.
Okay.
Later in life.
All right.
But I do want to talk about, okay. So if we could do it over again, how would we go about doing it? So I'll go first.
Alrighty.
So if I was buying my house all over again, I probably would have not settled for a $500, back end of the loan discount. I would have asked for more in closing costs to be covered. Now, granted, I hardly had anything in closing. I paid like $500 because that's how VA loans are. But I would have also gone and got pre-approved, because what happened is I overthought the process. I did the exact opposite. I was looking for homes that were too cheap. I should have been looking for one in the price range that I bought this home for. Mm-hmm. Because I was basically looking for a diamond in a pile of turds. And you can't, you can hammer a rock all you want, but you're not going to turn that rock into a sword unless it has the right material.
If you have the right resources.
Or the right resources. And so, so that would be the first thing I would do different is I'd get pre-approved. I would make sure that I really pushed back on the sellers when it's not in a seller's market, because it wasn't, it's not like when I bought my house, it was 2018. And while some people were experiencing difficulties finding homes, there were homes everywhere in my price range, and they weren't like being snatched up. My house had been on and off the market over like 6 months.
Wow.
So I would have definitely been a little bit more strict with the negotiations. And then the other thing is I probably would have paid someone else to come and do some of the repair work, because I did probably spend, I've probably got, 200 hours worth of my time fixing electrical issues in this house. So, it's kind of one of those things where it might be worth it to have the right guy come with the right diagnostic tools and the right, 20 years of experience to figure things out. Otherwise, I think everything else that could have gone wrong in my home buying experiences were just, little stupid
like learning experiences
that no matter what you do, how well prepared you are, that's just how it's going to have to be.
Yep.
So what about you? What if you could do it all over again? What would be the perfect process?
The perfect process. Oh my gosh.
Or maybe just say, like, besides what you've already mentioned, one or two things you would.
I know. I think I've mentioned. I don't know. I think that I've done a good job of making sure that I, budget correctly. And for me, it's making sure that my interest rate and the cost of the home is going to get my payment where I need it to be. So I actually, this isn't a regret, and I'm not talking about that, sorry, but I actually bought my rate to ensure the payment that I have now, my mortgage payment. So you can also do that. But I digress. I think I've really said everything. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So the real process, if you were to try to follow it in the most organized fashion of buying a home, I'm just going to go over it real quick, because the one thing that if we could just each of us share our one thing that is an absolute must, I would say first talk to your bank or your real estate agent, and they will guide you through the home buying process.
Yes. And get a good one.
And read reviews to make sure that you have a good one. Both bank and don't focus so much on the bank, because to be realistic, most of the time the bank, you close and 3 days later they've sold your mortgage to a different bank. So it's not like you're going to stick with that bank most likely.
Yeah.
But the real estate company is going to be the one who holds your hand and walks you through everything. But the process is you'd go to the bank, you'd get pre-approved. And then while you're starting to look for houses, which that's kind of goes along side by side with this step, you want to start getting your documents in order. So documents you need are a government issued ID. You need 2 years of work history. Typically, there are some exceptions depending on the lender. They like to have your W2 tax forms for the last 2 years, and we will be doing a segment on what we wish we knew about taxes.
Oh my gosh, barf.
I know.
Cool.
A lot of people don't know how to even file them. So we want to talk about things like that.
Yes.
This is the things we wish we would have known to make our lives a little easier.
It's just a topic that isn't fun.
It's not fun, but it can be.
Yes.
Depending on who you are.
Yeah.
You'll also need to determine how much you have available in your bank account for down payment, or that you're willing to come up with for a down payment. And then there's also usually an actual application with the financial institution that you'll fill out to buy the home. And then there might be other documents that are specific to your home that you may also need. For example, I needed certain military documents because I had a VA loan. So I had to have a DD-214. I had to have I was in the National Guard, so my release paperwork is not just the DD-214, like what active duty would be. It's another National Guard form. I can't remember, it's called NG-29 or something like that. That basically says I completed a full term in the National Guard.
Because he's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for your service.
And you're welcome. And I didn't want to go to prison for not completing that term.
Yeah, that's
so. And then the other things that we'd need to do is set our own budget, not just what can we afford in the home, but what do we anticipate the budget to be in that home. So like my parents, they had a home. Now they live in an apartment, and they're just blown away. That's though. A bummer. It is, but they don't want a home because they're older. It's hard for them to take care of. They just want everything taken care of for them and not have to worry about repairs or anything like that. But they get shocked every time they get their energy bill because they're like, it was only like $30. And I'm like, yeah, well, you only got like 5 light bulbs in this apartment, you know? Like, you're not trying to heat an entire house. You're not disposing of water throughout the entire house. So determine what your budget is, and then make sure you've added enough in there to either have fun money or savings or both.
Mm-hmm. Take the time.
Yeah.
It'll be worth it.
And then once you've done that, that's when you can really start looking for homes, because now you know, okay, this is what I was pre-approved for. This is what I want to spend. And I'm going to look in this range for home. And
you have to be willing to let a home go. Even if you love it, if it's not within those in your budget, you've got to let it go. It's not worth it.
Yes, absolutely. And when you do decide to start looking at homes, that's when I go the route where I would now contact the real estate agent. Mm-hmm. Because now I know what I'm looking for, and you can kind of read in their reviews online what kind of real estate they deal in. Are they doing high-end homes? Are they doing lower-end homes? Are they helping people who flip homes? You can try to find out some of that info to see what their forte is. And then you want to discuss what you're looking for, and you want to list out all the things that are requirements for the home. And then, so you have your needs and your wants. And then from that wants section, you need to like asterisk some things, are like, okay, if it doesn't have this, it's fine. I'd rather have a house with good bones and not a 2-car garage than have an awesome house and no garage.
What I would have done differently, it came to me. Okay. I would have never bought that house in Bountiful.
Why not?
It was a mess.
Because it was a mess?
It was awful. It made my family sick. Like, gave my son asthma from the mold that we couldn't find, which ended up being in the basement behind the shower. Mm-hmm. But yeah, would have gone a whole different route. And I bought it because it was the lowest. It was the cheapest. It was the cheapest
at the time. And that particular location in Bountiful, you're starting to get up on the hillside. As you go up location. The hill, it starts to get pricier. You were right next to an elementary school. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of appeal to it.
There were, but I should have, which I hate that word should, but I guess I could have gone with a house that was in better shape for $40,000 more, and it wouldn't have made that much of a difference in my mortgage. And I didn't know it at the time because that was my first home. So.
Right. And a lot of people don't. I mean, that's why we're talking about it. Also, when you're looking for a house and you're talking to the real estate agent, discuss what kind of neighborhoods you want to be in. Mm-hmm. You're in a great neighborhood. Yep. Fantastic neighborhood.
You have kids, look at the schools and how they rate in the state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And go and drive through those neighborhoods. See if, one street might look great. The other street might be full of graffiti, vandalism, bars on the window. You don't want to be on the edge of something you don't want to be in, because that edge will keep creeping closer and closer to you. And so once you've found the home that matches your description, you just look at the agent and say, I'd like to put in an offer. And the agent will say, okay, I'll send you some paperwork. You need to sign that this is your formal offer. And you can always go back on that initial offer. That is not a promise to buy the house.
Well, the earnest money.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's caveats, right? So the earnest money that we talked about, basically, you still can get some of that earnest money back. It doesn't necessarily mean that they get to keep it all. So that earnest money is contingent on certain elements of your contract. And what those elements are between you, your real estate agent, and the seller.
Yes.
So it could be, okay, if it does not pass the home inspection and you guys do not make the fixes or corrections, then I get my earnest money back and I can cancel buying the house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I had in my contract, which is why they had to fix the VA required repairs. The electrical wasn't a VA requirement because most of the electrical still worked.
Mm-hmm.
But having exposed wood, heaven forbid, they had to send a painter out to paint it. And so then you put in an offer, and then usually you get a counter offer, or mine was accepted, which was awesome. But I had a reasonable offer from the beginning. I wanted them to pay half my closing costs, and I wanted the house for what they had it listed as, which was at the time only $308,000. It appraised for $318,000, so they didn't know that. It was fine.
Yeah.
But I'm sure the appraiser didn't know the electrical didn't work.
Yeah.
You know? And then once you start doing that, your real estate agent holds your hands and guides you through everything. As long as you have all those other documents in order.
Can I plug my realtor in real quick?
Plug away.
She would love it. I'm sorry to cut you off.
It's okay.
But Sammy Knappus, she's a dream. She is a dream. She's a dream. And
this is an unsponsored ad.
It is an unsponsored ad, just a fan. She is the best.
Fangirl.
I'm fangirl. She is amazing. Anyway, go on.
No, that's fantastic. We always want to recognize businesses, professionals that are
go
good
above and
people.
beyond. Yes, and she is a beautiful human.
Yeah. My real estate agent was fantastic. His name is Dan Aline. And, you know, that's his side hustle is being a real estate agent.
Mine was better.
Very, very possible. But he did a fantastic job. He was able to get things to me very quickly. And the broker that he's with, whom I can't remember the name right now, but just, you know, they had really streamlined the process. The first time I bought a home, when we did have to submit documents, we had to do a lot of like scanning and print, sign, scan, send, but this was all done digitally.
Yeah, that was back in the day.
Yeah. I mean, it's the difference between 2012 and 2018.
We are getting old, John.
I know. Don't remind me.
Sorry about it.
So, I think to conclude today, what we wish we knew was, how do you start the process? We've gone over that. And how do you avoid some of those pitfalls that we found? And that's really become knowledgeable in home buying and get a good inspector.
And we've gone through it, but there is so much more to know. Like there's with so many different, you know, different ways of buying a home, different loans, you know, different ways of going about the purchasing. Like but this is like how it usually is, right? Like how people buy a home. It's usually the way that we're talking.
There's always some kind of a headache involved. There's always some kind of stress, but your real estate agent's job is to try to keep you calm and get through the process.
And teach you.
And teach you.
Yeah.
They have, at least in the state of Utah, I did go through half of real estate school and I got bored.
Hey.
But they are required to, I mean, they don't get to be like shady salespeople. Like, you know, if you go to a car dealership, you never know what you're going to get. They have to be informative without overstepping their bounds.
So my realtor, Sammy Knappus, she was buying my home and she's a friend, right? So she probably just wouldn't do this for everybody, but this is how amazing she is. Like she helped me be the seller of my home to her, walked me through the process, and I was able to be the seller. Like, and I had never done it before. And she just like took the reins. Like she's an angel.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like it was a great experience. The house that you have now, so glad you have it.
Me too.
Because I don't have to be on the roof.
Hey, me neither. I was up there with you.
Or on ladders or in dungeons.
He did so much work.
Yeah.
You're the best.
But it's awesome. And that is going to conclude our first episode of What We Wish We Knew.
Hey-o.
So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for being our first viewers.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.